Aleph Amud Beis 11b. We come now to an incredible story. The Gemara describes now with respect to the Jews in Egypt. Sorry? Okay, thank you. An unbelievable story. And we're going to read it on its literal level, and then we shall see if perhaps some details can be illuminated by a deeper mystical meaning. So count 3 lines down from the wider set of lines on Yud Aleph Amud Beis 11b. The first word is Befricha, and then we have the word Darash. So the Gemara says, Darash Rab Avira. Rab Avira said the following teaching. B'schar nashim tzidkaniyos, in the merit of righteous women, shahayu ba'osei dar, that lived in that generation, the generation of the exile in Egypt, the slavery in Egypt. Nigalu Yisrael Mitzrayim, the Jewish women were redeemed from Egypt. So what's the story that made these women so righteous, on account of whom the Jews were redeemed from Egypt? We have, by tradition, the same thing applies to the future redemption. The women stand at the forefront in their faith, and their resolve to keep on pushing, to keep on fighting, and to raise the next generation at all costs in a Jewish way. That's the key to redemption, as we shall see in the story. So here's the story, says Rabbi Avira. When the women would go draw water from the well, HaKadosh Baruch Hu mizamen lahem, God would bring for them dogim tanim, small fish, b'kadeyen, in their jug. So when they came to get water, they also got food. That's a simple reading, I assume. And their pails would be filled, half water, half fish. Ubois, and they would come home. The shoitvois, and then they would put on the boiling pot. Shtei kaderes, they'd end up having two pails, two pots to boil. Achas shachamin, one for warm water to wash, to use to wash their feet, to wash their bodies, as we'll see in a moment. Va'achas shaldagim, and one with fish to eat, presumably to eat. 1 second. Yeah. So one hot water to wash their husband's feet in the field, and the other to eat a fish. And then and they would go to their husband's lasada in the field with the water, with the beautiful fresh hot water. And they would wash their husbands. And anoint them with oil and cream, whatever. And feed them this fish. And give them to drink. And then they would engage with them intimately. Bein sfatayim, between the Rashi explains, between like the stalks in the field, to be kind of secluded. So you have stalks on either end, a ditch in the middle, and husband and wife would be together. And this in and of itself was a major mesiras nefesh, a major self-sacrifice. Slavery usually does not go along with intimacy. And the Egyptians' concern was that the Jews were getting too big. So they figured enslave them. And aside from the fact that enslaving them makes it difficult for them to fight, it also makes it difficult for them to bear children or rear children. People don't engage in this kind of activity when they're starving and beaten and worn down. But the women understood that at all costs, we have to make sure to raise the next generation. So in the fields, in private, in a modest way, in between the stalks, they would coax their husbands to be with them. And in this way, guarantee the next generation. And of course, God assisted them with this miracle of having water and fish emerge as once. We'll discuss perhaps later what the significance of fish is.
Was the fish brought to the field too? No.
It says they would feed them. They would give the Gemara says that they would bring him, feed them as well, right? So I assume they brought the fish there too to feed them. So this is something that's amazing that they did this. And we have a similar thing with respect to the kior, the basin in the temple and the Mishkan, in the traveling tabernacle in the desert, the wash basin, which the Kohanim would use every morning to wash their hands and feet before they begin the service, was made of copper, specifically copper that had been the women's mirrors in Egypt. And Hashem specifically wanted that. Hashem tells Moshe, and Rashi quotes it there, that this is the mirrors by which the women would make sure they look beautiful, so their husbands would want to be with them, notwithstanding the slavery and the emotional and physical stress they were under. And this way, again, guaranteeing the next generation of Jews.
Can you write that down in stone? I want to show it to my wife.
Yeah. So Shemar, as the verse reads, here's a verse that alludes to this episode that they're copulating in the fields. This is a verse in Tehillim which says, "In tishkavun bein svatayim," if you lie down between the lips, or like the edges, right? So that's an allusion to this idea that they were in between the stalks. And then, the verse continued, etc. Now the Gemara interjects, the schar tishkun bein tzvatayim, in merit of the fact that they lay down together, husband and wife lay down together, in between the stalks, zachu, they merited, Yisrael, the children merited, the biz Mitzrayim, to the wealth of Egypt, right when they left. Even though it was preordained, Avram Avinu, Hashem had promised Avram Avinu that when they leave, they will go, they're going to leave their slavery with lots of wealth. But nonetheless, it was actualized in reality in merit of this event, that the women engaged with their husbands in the field. Because that very verse which talks about, which said before, if you lie between the stalks, that verse continues and says, as the verse reads, Kanfe Yoina, the wings of the dove being the Jewish people, Nichbe bekesef is covered in silver, the Evrei Seha, and
Told her to go home.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry.
The Evrei Seha, and there's another word for wings, Yirakrak Charutz, in gold shimmers, like covered in gold. This word Charutz, which means like shimmers, also is the same word that Rashi uses to describe a ditch, Charutz, a ditch in which they were together. Okay. So they had this whole elaborate scheme, drawing water. God blesses them with fish. They go home, bottle to 2 pots, water and food, go to their husbands, clean them up, feed them, give them to drink, revive their energy a little bit, and then engage with them in the fields. And that is why they merited to all the wealth of Egypt. Now the narrative continues. Now when these women would become pregnant, boys, the Bateya, they go home, pregnant. So I guess they would go home to maybe rest or whatever it is they need to do. Now, Kivon Shemagia is man meledehen. Once it comes time for them to give birth, they go back out to the field to give birth. Tachas hatapuach, under the trees. Right, tapuach literally means an apple, but I believe here it means a tree. Yeah, apple tree. Yes, yeah, tapuach, apple tree.
I think I've heard the term.
Sorry?
Apple tree.
The apple tree. So they would give birth under the apple tree. Perhaps we'll discuss the significance of that too. Shenemar, as the verse reads, it's a verse in the Song of Songs. Tachas atapuach articha, under the apple tree, I awakened you. Awakened you as in awakened the birthing process. And the narrative continues. So they're giving birth under the apple trees in the field, I guess, because they don't want the Egyptians to see. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu shalech mishmei marim, God would send messengers, angels presumably, from heaven. Mishim nakir, someone who's going to clean the baby up, umashbir oisan, and straighten the body, the baby's body, right? The baby comes out, it's narrow birthing canal and it's a little contorted, and the baby needs to be like massaged, its body massaged into a proper shape, and God would send messengers from heaven to do that for them. Oisan kachaya, doing this all for them, like a maid, like what's a midwife. Shemishaperes savlad, which indeed straightens out the body. Shenemar, as the verse reads, this is a verse in Ezekiel. And on your birth on the day on which you were born, like Kadosh, like actually the verse as we have it is like kat shach, but I guess the way the Gemara is interpreting is like Kadosh sharach, I think that's how you pronounce it. You had no one to cut your umbilical cord, and you had no one to drink to wash you, or and to straighten out to straighten you out, except for I alone, as it were, God did this for you. And then the narrative continues even further. And then these angels will collect for them shnei agulin, two round stones that looked kind of like as Rashi tells it for us, like around two round stones. You'll see what they might look like in a minute. Achash shemen, one for oil, v'achash dvash, and one for honey. And they would feed, the babies would suckle from these stones. Or maybe the mothers would, to revive their energy. Shenemar, as it says, the verse is in Devarim. And he weaned you with honey from a rock and oil from another word for rock, stone. Okay, so the miracles continue. The miracle began with with fish, and then the miracle of Hashem sending messengers from heaven to be the midwives, to cut the umbilical cord, straighten the baby out, wash the baby up, and then another miracle of these two stones that are providing milk and honey for the children, for the babies to enjoy. I guess the mothers also. I don't know. I didn't say specifically who it's for, but I assume it's for the babies, maybe for the mothers as well. Now, the narrative continues. As soon as the Egyptians noticed them, there's these babies that were born, boy and lahargan, they would come to kill the babies. The nasan lamnes, and the miracle occurs to the babies, and they would be swallowed up by the earth to protect them from the Egyptians. So what did the Egyptians do? Mevin shvarim, and the Egyptians would come and bring oxen, and they would plow the fields on top of where these babies are under the earth. Shenemar, as the verse reads in Tehillim, al gabi, on top of me, charshu charshim, they have plowed their plowings, plowing the field on top of the babies. Now, once these Egyptians were gone, they would like sprout forth and come out like grass of the field. Shenemar, as the verse reads, this is the verse we quote in the Haggadah. They grew like grass, or you grew like growth in the field. I gave you. This is what God says. I granted you to be growing like grass in the field. Now, now the narrative continues. The kivin shemis gadlin, once the babies were old enough, they would go in groups to their home. Shenemar, is the verse reads, the same verse earlier from Yecheskel, which said that they would grow like grass, also says Batirbi, and they become multiplied, particularly and they grew, the Tavoy, and they came, but Adi Adoyim, in excellent beauty, or like beauty of beauty. That's the literal meaning of the word Adi Adoyim. The Gemara comments, you don't read it simply as Adi Adoyim, which means great beauty, Ela be'adaresh, be'idri Adoyim, in groups. And this is the great miracle of these women, and that is why it's the merit of this that the Jews left Egypt, because of their faith and trust that we have to do the mitzvah of bringing children into this world, and it's up to Hashem to decide what's going to happen to them. Right? They could have argued, they could have reasoned very well. Look, people say today, even when they have abundance, people say, "What do I have to bring children into this crazy world?" Our world is not near as crazy as Egypt, and they still went ahead and brought children into this world. So that faith itself, is worthy of praise, and for that merit, they merited the redemption. And the verse concludes the narrative. The Gemara concludes the narrative as follows: when God revealed Himself on the ocean, when He split the sea, these children, they were the ones to first recognize Hashem. They would quote this Gemara, I don't know how many times, this idea that children were the first to recognize Hashem. Adults have this way of convoluting and complicating things. We explain ourselves, we justify, we counter-argue, and we lack that clarity of vision. Whereas children are uncomplicated, they're black and white. And if they're not, it's because we messed it up and we convoluted it for them. In general, when you're educating children, you don't start reasoning and arguing and back and forth. Please understand clarity. This is moral, this is immoral. Don't give me exceptions and don't make explanations, don't give me caveats. This is moral, this is not. Finished. Children have this clarity. So they're the first one to see Hashem. The sea splits, they're the first ones to recognize this is the hand of Hashem. This is a miracle right here. And the Gemara quotes the verse to indicate that they were indeed the first ones to recognize Hashem. Why? As the verse reads, we say in the Shir HaShidim, the Song of Songs, Zeh Keli v'anveyu. This is my God, and I shall exalt him. So it says Zeh Keli, this is my God, indicating I've already seen him. I've already seen him. So it means the people who are saying Zeh Keli, this is my God, are talking about, these are people who already recognize Hashem. So that when the children sing the song, they're describing God that they've already seen earlier because they were the first ones to see him. They're the first ones to recognize it. So this is the end of the narrative on the amazingness of women. There's lots to be learned from here. So first of all, like I mentioned before, there's the face of the Jewish women bringing children into this world, even under the craziest of circumstances. And it's for their merit that we merited redemption. God willing, in the future redemption as well, meriting it in the merit of faithful Jewish women. Number one. Number two, we can see what education is like. Because these women, because these children were born at as a result of their mother's self-sacrifice, that's why they grew up to be the kind of people to first recognize Hashem. Right? In other words, it's not just how you talk to your children, but it's also the way in which they're born has an effect on them. If right from the beginning, the attitude toward our children is that we're doing this with self-sacrifice because this is what Hashem wants, then you're guaranteed, or at least somewhat guaranteed, our children will grow up to recognize Hashem. But if our bearing children is selfish in nature, so I want to have children, then this is not a guarantee. The children recognize Hashem first because of the sacrifice in the way in which they were born. It doesn't say anything about how they educated them or how they talked to them or how they explained anything. It just describes how they were born. The because it's an attitude thing. Before the children are born, what's your attitude towards the children? The attitude is they fulfill a gap in my life, then it's not going to be a good thing. Right? Your children are not a little handbag. You get a handbag, you get a dog, and you get a child. It's not the way it works. Children are a blessing from Hashem, and you have it because this is what Hashem wants, the ultimate purpose, with self-sacrifice at all costs, like these women. If that's the attitude, then you have the kind of children where they recognize Hashem right away. Second comment to be made. Third comment to be made about the fish. What's the deal with the fish? Why the fish here? They went to dig up to get to the well to get water, and Hashem makes a miracle, half fish, half water. What's the story with the fish? So perhaps, and this is something we learned in a previous Gemara, right? When did we learn it? Can't remember. We have the previous Gemara about Yosef HaTzadik being the one who transcends Ayin Hara because of his connection to fish. Ben Peres Yosef, right? The fish are the model for the anti-Ayin Hara, for the anti-evil eye. That's right. We learned it back. It was a while back we learned this. Yeah. Yes. And there we explained that fish, well, for the model for fish, why fish are the the antidote to the evil eye is because they have no eyelids, their eyes never close.
And they're connected to their source.
And that's the main key point. The Fish are connected to their source. They're constantly absorbed in their water, right? We, human beings, were created from the earth. And we don't walk in the earth. We walk on top of the earth with a sense of independence from our source, indicating a spiritual existence that feels intuitively, in some ways, distant from Hashem. And we have to reconnect to our source. Intuitively, we feel selfish. Intuitively, we feel ourselves. We have to reconnect to Hashem. But fish are subsumed in their water. In fact, Rabbi Gamliel is of the opinion that if a person goes into the mikveh and there's a fish touching him, and that does not constitute as a chatzitza, as a separation between him and the water. The halacha is that you can't have any, when your person is going to mikveh, they can't have any separation between the body, between the water and their physical body. But fish, according to Rabbi Gamliel at least, does not constitute separation. Why? Because fish are one entity with the water. They're one with the source. And that's why fish are the antidote to the ayin hara. Because what's an ayin hara? What's the evil eye? The evil eye is someone feels jealous of somebody else and says, how come that guy has this blessing in life? If I, the one who has that blessing, think that I deserve it, then they'll open the book in heaven and say, well, do you deserve it? And then you have a problem. But if to begin with, I'm like a fish, so I don't deserve anything. It's all a gift from you, Hashem. I'm completely consumed in what you give me. So no book to open because it's not dependent on merit. It's dependent on the fact that Hashem granted. Again, it's this kind of self-sacrifice in the sense that my life transcends me. Not the person's dying, even though the women were ready to die to have children because they're risking their lives literally to have children. But also there's this attitude of how you self-sacrifice. Let me put it this way: self-sacrifice is not about how you die, but it's about how you live.
Be a man.
Be a man, meaning
Moshe, Yeshua, another say. They didn't have this. They said everything I have is from Hashem, so they were protected.
Right.
We learned someone.
Yeah. We had a similar thing.
And they were protected for this reason.
Yeah.
Because, they didn't attribute any of the.
I think the personal achievements off Hashem. Yeah. So living like a fish is an attitude in life, not taking any credit for anything. It's all gift from Hashem, and living a life that's continuously and consciously connected to Hashem. Total self-sacrifice, where the fish doesn't have any identity. Its entire identity is nothing other than the water. I have no individualistic identity. I'm nothing other than the servant of Hashem. Like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai famously said, "Ano simona ba'alma." I am nothing other than a sign. I'm a marking point. My existence is just to mark and indicate where Hashem is. I have no individual identity. And that's what it means self-sacrifice, not just to be willing to die, although that's part of it, but self-sacrifice is a way of living. I live where myself is not, it's not about me, it's not about self. Myself is set aside. Myself is not what I'm living for. I live like a fish, consumed in the truth of Hashem. That's my whole identity.
It seems like
There was something in there.
Showing up here, because that's the kind of attitude women had, which is why they were willing to have children, which is why they were married, which is why they had this kind of faith in Hashem, which is why it's on their merit that the Jews left Egypt. And it's why they were able to wean children who were first to recognize Hashem, because their lives were not about themselves. What do you say, Alan?
There was something in there that either I missed it or it wasn't listed, that they never carried for the full 9 months.
That's mentioned, but not here, and that's not in this narrative. It is mentioned, but not here. At least not in this narrative here.
I wonder why it was left out.
Sorry?
I wonder why it was left out.
It could be because of the way the traditions comes down. Like, when a sage shares a narrative or shares a teaching, he's sharing it based on what he's received by tradition. So this was his tradition, and it could be somebody else had a different way. It could be that. Okay. Another interesting thing is the Gemara says that they gave birth under the apple tree. So for those who were paying attention to their kiddush on Shabbos day or Friday night, or Shabbos day actually specifically, you say, Dahi Sudasa Dechaka Tapuchim. This is the meal. It's a Kabbalistic statement if you're following along in the Chabad Siddur. Dahi Sudasa Dechaka Tapuchim. This is the meal of the apple orchard. What's this business word? The meal of what apple orchard? It's a Kabbalistic idea. And if my memory serves me correctly, the apple orchard is symbolic of, not mistaken, it's symbolic of, okay, you know what, I'm not going to say anything because I'm making a mistake. I'm not going to say anything. Because I want to rely on my memory right now. I want to look it up first. So remind me tomorrow. God willing, I'll look it up, and tomorrow morning I'll tell you what the Kabbalah says about the apple tree, and perhaps that will help us. And we'll see. Like, if my memory is correct, I think I have an explanation, but I don't want to rely on my memory. So I'm going to look it up again, and then we'll see. But the Siddur is just going to give me the translation of Chakat Hapuchim, which is apple orchard tree. I'm looking for what the Kabbalistic meaning of what apple tree is, which one of the spheres it symbolizes. Yeah, absolutely.
You know what's something when I was a kid,
Yeah.
there was a song that used to be, it was a popular song. Don't lay under the apple tree with anyone else but me.
Yeah.
I wonder if it related to that.
Yeah. Anyways, I would like to see the significance of the conception happening in between stalks of wheat and the birth happening under apple tree.
Like, what's the connection?
Yeah, why not give birth also under in the privacy of the wheat stalks? Why the birth happening in the apple trees? Right. In other words, the simple reading is that the reason why they were intimate conception in between the wheat stalk, in between the stalks of grains for privacy. So why not the same thing when they're giving birth? There's a switch. They're giving birth under apple trees.
Right.
So there must be some sort of significance in that conception happens between between the ditches between the stalks, and then right. That's what Rashi tells it for us. Let's see. Okay, so I have to make it more accurately, actually. The way Rashi says is between the borders of the field, right? Where the border of this field and the border of that field. And the borders of the field are higher, and then there's a ditch in the middle in between the borders of the field. So I'm not exactly wrong, but okay, it's between the stalks, but not in the middle of the field. It's actually the border of the fields. So the edge of one field, the end of the other field. And there's like a ditch, there's a row of ditch in between the fields, and I'm assuming the stalks also making it private. Now, but when it comes to giving birth, they give under the apple tree. So there is the switch between where they conceive and where they give birth. And I'm certain there's significance, and I'm almost certain that when I look up what the apple tree symbolizes, we're going to have our answer. So we're going to hold on to that till tomorrow, and another comment tomorrow also about the birthing process of the Jewish people, the midwives, right? We have Yocheved and Miriam and Elisheva. We're going to learn about that coming tomorrow as well, and about Pharaoh's decree to kill the baby boys and so on. So we still have more, God willing, on this whole narrative of the Egyptian slavery. A wonderful day, everybody.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Have a good day, Alan.
Glad you picked it out.
Yeah.